Today on Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mania, we are taking a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nations SH Monster Arts Godzilla from the 2001 film Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. GMK is my absolute favorite film of the Millennium series of Godzilla movies, and is definitely one of my absolute favorite Godzilla designs. And compound that with the fact that we haven't gotten a new monster art sculpt since Mecha King Ghidorah, and that was over a year ago by this point. I was way too excited to pick this guy up. I didn't realize he was a Tamashii web exclusive in Japan, so I wasn't able to order him from a Japanese site, but I did manage to pick this one up on eBay and have him shipped to me seemingly before most other US retailers have gotten him in stock. So it doesn't seem like there's that much of a gap between the Japanese and American releases of this figure for once, which is awesome. So I've been waiting what seems like forever for a new Godzilla figure, so let's not waste any more time and take a closer look. This design of Godzilla is one of the most badass, terrifying looks Godzilla has ever had across all nearly 30 movies. And this figure captures that really well, but also revealed to me something that never came across in the movie. This look kinda reminds me of a puppy. I don't know what it is precisely, but the look on Godzilla's face just kinda has that overly eager, excited look. But at the same time, it looks menacing as all hell. The first thing anybody will notice on this are the dead eyes, and I think Tamashii Nations did a fantastic job with these. As you can see, they didn't just go pure white, they actually rimmed them with black, and it kind of fades into the white, so there's kind of a gray zone there in the middle, and I think they just look spectacular. I know a lot of people were happy to get this figure next after the Godzilla 2014 figure had some lazy eye issues. All the scales are very, very nicely sculpted on here, very deep sculpting. The paint job is kind of a matte charcoal gray across the whole thing, but there are some slight paint variations. It looks like some lighter grays brought in to really accentuate all the different scales and everything going on in his head. There's the tiny little pug nose there at the front, the big heavy eyebrows, very impressive set of teeth, some nice yellowing effects going on there. They're all individually sculpted and painted, and then we can pop that mouth open, revealing the lower set of teeth, and a really nicely detailed tongue in there as well. The tongue has some great texture to it that really just makes it look alive and nasty and wet. They also include a good amount of gloss in there as well to get that feeling going. The rest of the sculpting and detailing on Godzilla is equally impressive. The same great scale texture continues throughout. Here on the chest, we kind of get a slightly different pattern, looking almost like armored bits here across his chest. Really heavy muscles in the upper chest as well. Then it gets down to the wider hips there at the bottom. The arms are fairly short, but pretty standard for Godzilla. Then we do have his four-fingered claws. The claws themselves are a light gray that transitions into that charcoal gray, which looks really good. The dorsal spines on this Godzilla do start on the head, but they're charcoal gray up until you get to below the neck joint where they start getting a lighter gray look. There's a really tiny row here on the side and the three larger rows here in the middle. Pretty irregular looking, not Godzilla 2000 irregular, but decently kind of strange looking. No massive gaps in there. Granted, I have the seams closed up about as far as they go. I really don't think the spacing in here looks all that bad when you stretch them out. If you look at the spikes dead on from the back, you can see they're kind of tilted to different directions. Even the little individual fingery parts here at the top kind of go off in different directions themselves. But it has a very cool look. Spines kind of start with a charcoal gray, then get lighter as they go up, which is a nice transition of paint there. They continue down the tail before they start becoming way too small here at the base. Tail's nicely detailed as well. It's not super long, but not too short either. We do get the smoother underside there on the bottom, which looks pretty good. The legs on this Godzilla are pretty chunky. It's got big kneecaps there, and then some really badass looking feet. Same with the fingernails. It's light gray on the claws, and it kind of fades into that charcoal gray. With the raised up fourth claw back here on either side, which looks really good. And an interesting thing with this Godzilla is there's a lot of thickness below the claws on his foot. So when you set him down on the ground, he's not standing nearly as flat-footed as a lot of the other Godzillas do. There's kind of an arch to his foot, and the toenails are much higher off the ground than they kind of traditionally are on a figure like this. For articulation, it's SH Monster Arts, so you get exactly what you'd expect. The jaw is on a hinge, so it could open pretty darn wide. The tongue is also on a hinge. Now you might need some to help get this up off the floor of his mouth, but it's actually on a ball joint, so you could raise it up. You could even move move it side to side in his mouth if you wanted to, which is really cool. There are multiple joints here in his neck. We have one down here at the base of his neck. It's all ball joints. You can move up, down, left, right, side to side. You can get a little bit of tilting action, but they're kind of squared off, so you don't get a lot of that. There's a second joint here about midway through his neck, and then one here at the base of his head, where you can get him looking pretty far down, pretty far up. I've also noticed you can kind of slide the head in and out of positions on here, so you can really bring his head up, and then you can really bring it down to have a super hunched over look that looks pretty darn cool. We have ball joints at the shoulders. Now my left arm on Godzilla seems to have a better range of motion. It'll go forward, back, it'll go out to the side, it'll even kind of pivot backwards and forwards in its joint. It's also a little loose, it does tend to pop out from time to time. My right arm, however, it'll swivel forward and back. It goes out a little bit, and that's because I've been working the joint quite a bit to get it to move more, but more often than not, when I'm trying to move it too far, the arm ends up popping out from below the joint, and I just don't seem to be able to get the same range on this arm. It's getting there, but I feel like I have to mess with the joint more to really loosen it up. Godzilla has a swivel at the upper arm. The elbow joint on this figure is pretty limited. It's kind of a double joint, and it still doesn't have a whole lot of range of motion. You do get a ball joint here at the wrist. You can rotate as well as move a little bit in and out with it. The torso, we have two ball joints, one in the upper torso, one in the lower. So you can lean a little bit forward, a little bit back, and you could also get a little side to side motion. You obviously want to watch your spines back here to make sure you're not rubbing them against each other as you try to rotate or even move up and down with them. At the hips, we have ball joints, so we can go pretty far forward, pretty far back, as well as out to the side and kind of rotate with that ball joint as well. A double jointed knee with an okay range of motion for such a bulky figure. You can also swivel here at the knee. There's a ball joint there at the lower ankle, which I'm having trouble isolating right now. There's a ball joint at the foot itself. And the tail is a bunch of ball joints going back down the tail. Pretty tight joints as well. They seem to stay together nicely. They don't droop like some of the other Monster Arts figures have in the past. And I love that under each of these kind of joints, there's a subsection that really kind of hides the gaps. For a size comparison, here's a couple of the Bandai Creations figures I have from this movie. On the left is the Bandai Creation GMK Godzilla, and I much prefer this Tamashii Nation sculpt over that Bandai Creations one, but that's not all that surprising. And then there on the right is the King Ghidorah, which is actually in decent scale since it was kind of a short King Ghidorah in that film, but definitely lacking when compared to this Godzilla. Then to compare him to a couple previously released Godzilla figures, on the left is the NECA Godzilla 1954, and on the right is the Monster Arts Godzilla Rebirth figure. And this guy is definitely taller than both of them, which surprises me. The NECA Godzilla 54 is a pretty large figure compared to a lot of the Monster Arts, and I'm kind of glad Monster Arts is beefing up the size to match those figures or exceed them, though I kind of hope they don't keep with that trend, as we'll discuss a little later. And then last but not least, here he is compared to the Bandai Theater exclusive GMK figure. Because the translucent gray vinyl, I've reviewed them before, and I've absolutely loved the Bandai vinyl figure, and I can't really say which one's better. I like both for different reasons. I give this figure an incredibly high recommend. I absolutely love this figure. Now I will say, and I've seen other people have similar issues, there are some loose joints on him. And not loose like they won't hold a pose. They'll all hold poses. Loose as in they pop out of their sockets. It's something we've seen a lot on Bandai Tamashii Nations figures, and a figure like this isn't nearly as annoying to have those happen as it is with King Ghidorah losing his heads all the time or something like that. It's a little easier just to pop the joint back on and finish posing the figure. But particularly his left hand and left shoulder have popped out on me during this review, and then his right bicep pops out as well. So just something to be aware of, but it does not hurt my love for this figure one bit. Now we will be getting a GMK Godzilla from NECA. I believe that figure has been postponed until October, tentatively at least. And I know a lot of people like NECA because they're much less expensive than the Monster Arts, but I can't see them coming anywhere near the coolness factor that this guy has. But I guess we'll see when that comes out. Monster Arts also has some new releases on the horizon. Some I'm really excited about, some I'm only kind of excited about. Coming out later this month, I think it got pushed back a week or two, is their own version of the Godzilla 1954 version, the original Godzilla. I have that one on pre-order, and hopefully I'll get it pretty quickly. There's also a Godzilla 1989 figure coming out this fall, and its name is somewhat problematic because I don't want to attempt to pronounce the Japanese words that follow it, but the initials are 3 Ks. but it's a light and sound Godzilla. And my only problem with it is the fact that they're doing a different scale now. To fit all those electronics, I guess, they're bumping it up to a much larger figure than the standard Monster Art, so it's not going to go in with the rest of your collection as cleanly. And coming out not long after that is the Monster Arts Shin Gojira, the Godzilla resurgence from the brand new movie. It's not even out yet in Japan at the time of this recording. And that one looks to be about the same height as that 1989 version. But somehow the fact that Shin Gojira is this really gangly, weird looking thing, I somehow feel like it might still fit in with these other Monster Arts just by being weird. But plenty of stuff to look forward to for articulated kaiju fans. And it was nice, after collecting all these big shelf-hogging X Plus figures for quite a while, to get something a little more small and compact and posable. I like both lines quite a bit, and it's kind of nice to trade off on them for once instead of being all in one or the other. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mania. Stay tuned for more to come.